I'd like to call this regular city council meeting of February 18th to order. Would you please call the roll?
Bradbury,
Here.
Gass, Gass,
Here.
Flora.
Can you hear me? Here.
Was that you, Riley? Okay. Kiefer,
Yes.
Bergeron,
No. Yes, I'm here.
Gage, Gage,
Here.
Zingy,
Here.
Flora. I'm not sure if I missed you or not. I'm sorry.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody is present, so we will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United States of America,
of the United States of
And
America,
to the republic
to the
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. But this time, the Ketchikan City Council would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of this land in Ketchikan, the Tongass Tlingit people. That brings us down to public hearing on ordinance number 21-1927, increasing electrical rates by 1.5%. Is there anybody here to speak to that? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on and close that. We'll go on to public hearing on ordinance number 21-1923, increasing water rates by 5%. Anybody here to speak to that? Hearing none, we'll close that and move on to communications. And it was with great privilege and an honor to start with an official proclamation. Whereas the greatest asset of our nation, state, and our community is the people, whose heritage reflects the diversity of the ethnic and cultural groups which have made significant contributions throughout our history. And whereas individuals like Elizabeth Pradovich has contributed to the diversity which has made this nation strong by fighting for equal rights of all Alaskans and all Americans. And whereas, as a grand president of the Alaskan Native Sisterhood, Elizabeth Pradovich spearheaded the civil rights movement in Alaska by communicating her personal vision and providing crucial testimony that inspired and persuaded the territorial legislature to pass legislation designed to provide equality for all Alaskans. And whereas after her speech, the gallery and some of the senators gave her rousing applause, recognizing both her passion and her support for equal rights. And whereas due to the large part of her moving testimony, the legislature passed the Anti-Discrimination Act of 1945. And on February 16, 1945, Ernest Gruning, governor of the Territory of Alaska, signed the legislation into law, which ensured the dignity and equality of Alaska Natives. And whereas the passage of this first anti-discrimination bill in Alaska occurred nearly 20 years before the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964. And whereas in 1988, the Alaska State Legislature passed a bill designating February 16th of each year as Elizabeth Pradovich Day in Alaska to honor and celebrate Elizabeth's proud influence on our state. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Robert Severson, Mayor of the City of Ketchikan, Alaska, do hereby proclaim February 16th, 2021 as Elizabeth Pradovich Day, and encourage all residents to recognize the great contribution Elizabeth Pradovich made to the state of Alaska and its people by fighting for equality for all Alaskans, and to recognize the diversity in our community and honor those individuals who continue the work of Elizabeth Pradovich every day to enhance understanding and appreciation among all the people of our community. Signed this 18th day of February 2021, Mayor Robert Severson. And we also have a letter from the Ketchikan Resource Steering Committee laid on the table, looking for support. You have that. And I believe there's an item C, which is a letter to our Representative Ortez and Senator Stedman for a reappropriation of funds in regards to, I think it's CPV monies that are available through a program. Is that correct, Carl?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that, that brings us down to persons to be heard. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody to speak to the council tonight?
Your Honor, our first speaker tonight is Jay Matani.
Good evening, Jay.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Jay Matani, 50 Front Street. First, I commend you for taking up the resolution, resolutely asking for a waiver so that we can have shifts coming to American ports. Also commend you and the EOC for doing a great job mitigating the COVID crisis and amazing job at vaccine rollout. I'm one of the recipients of that. I speak today, though, after talking to many members of the community and those who supported me in the last election on their behalf. I urge you, I implore you, I beg you, increase in rates and taxes during this evil pandemic is not a feel-good thing. It is only depressing. We and they know we need the increase in water rates and electric rates. But please kindly kick this can down the road at least through this next summer. This evil pandemic has affected all of us. We know the amount is not much, but it means maybe a bar of ice cream for a child to feel good, or a copay for a Medicaid or Medicare patient, maybe some extra apples for a family to fight the depression of the pandemic to feel good. I know our Cracker Jack, city management, and financial team will find a way to keep us afloat from these rates in water and electric till at least the end of summer. So thank you very much. Please consider this. Respectfully, Jay Matani. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Who else do we have?
We have Spencer Strasburg.
Evening, Spencer.
It'll just take a second.
All right.
Oh,
There you are.
Y'all hear me?
Yes, Spencer, go ahead.
Spencer Strasburg, 618 Canyon Road. I kind of wanted to call tonight. I'm not really sure you guys got any other options than to raise the rates on the taxpayer, but I just wanted to remind you that just about all of you folks that sat up there during the political run, you promised all of these folks that you weren't going to do that. So I just wanted to remind you of that tonight when you guys vote that through. The next thing I wanted to spend some time on, I have a pretty strong appreciation for writing letters to the cruise ship stuff and working hard to preserve the industries that we've had in the past. But I think it might be good leadership if we spend as much time thinking about some ideas for the future. So I kind of racked my brain. What are those kind of ideas? And I come up with a few things. There were just a few examples, but I wanted to give you those examples, and maybe some leaders can go out and find us some options for this. I know this is an easy time. Things are changing really fast. The whole landscape is changing very quickly. But one thing I did think was maybe we should be thinking about what we're going to do with our finances, being that our economy is changing very rapidly. Should we be putting money into Bitcoin? Maybe is it possible to hold our money somewhere else than the funds that the tourist head tax money is tied up in? Can we hold them in something like a Bitcoin account and then gain interest on them? I'm not sure, but those are the kind of conversations we should have. Also, I think that maybe there's some opportunity in us creating a Bitcoin mining farm. We have the right climate for it. We have cool climate. We can maybe get our KPU guys working on some of that stuff. That's an interesting avenue. There's a few ideas like this. Also, I just became aware of the Cloaquina Corporation has a project in Prince of Wales Island. It's a carbon credit project, and I'm hazy at best at most of this stuff, but some of the very first research that I'm realizing is that carbon credits are something of the future. There's a value to them, and maybe that's something that we can be doing with our forest since we're locked out of it. Those are the things that maybe we can spend a little time talking about it, generate some ideas, but there's other things we can be doing here now, but we have to look to the future. So many times I think it's easy to look back at timber and say, gosh, please open the roads, and look back at cruise ships and say, please let them come. But we don't have a lot of control over that. What we do have control over is our future. And so we can just start talking about some of those ideas. I think it might be good for us. Anyway, if you guys have any questions.
Thank you for that, Spencer. Those are all reasonable ideas for to look at, and they may be on a larger state level, but I appreciate you thinking about those and bringing them forward.
Okay. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you.
Our last speaker, Your Honor, is Kirk Miller with the DOT, Department of Transportation.
Okay. Kirk, are you on?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I tried to get on WebEx, didn't work. Yeah, I'm the regional pre-construction engineer for South Coast Region, and I see you got a letter on the agenda in relation to our Tongass project, and I'm just calling in to let you know I'm available for questions if you got any. Other than that, I don't have a lot to say, but if I can help with anything, I'd be glad to pitch in.
Thank you very much. If there's questions from the council or staff at the time we bring that up, I'd be more than happy to call on you to answer them if you can.
You bet. I'll just hang out and see if you need me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else?
Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that brings us down to the consent agenda. At this particular time, I don't have anything to move to the consent agenda. So do I have a motion for consent?
Moved, Your Honor. Consent, Your Honor.
It has been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, would you read the items?
Approval of minutes, regular city council meeting of February 4th, 2021. Exempting the procurement of annual software maintenance agreement for the First City Libraries Consortium from competitive bidding written quotation requirements of the Ketchikan Municipal Code, Cyrus Dynex, a budget transfer, paramedic license reimbursement, liquor license renewal application for Ronald John McKinley. And that's all there is.
Oh, sorry.
All
I
right.
thought there was some KPU, but there's not. Okay.
Is there any questions, discussion in regards to any of the items? Hearing and seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Gas,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gage,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Flora,
Yes.
Bergeron.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item B, unfinished business, general government. Item B1, ordinance number 21-1927, increasing electrical rates by 1.5%. Second reading. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor.
Yes.
The City Council approve and second reading ordinance number 21-19-24, increasing electric rates by 1 1/2%, establishing a date for public hearing and providing an effective date.
Second.
Mark, do you have anything?
No, sir.
So Carl, what is the date when this would be implemented?
This would go into effect June 1st, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So there's a half a year is what we're looking at, correct? For the first year?
Be 7 months.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So the reason for the electrical rate increase is because we're bonding for a new power line from Tyee Lake to Petersburg.
We are, if I may, we are not bonding for it.
Or they are.
Yeah, that's a pass-through cost from the wholesale provider, SEPA. And they are in the process of, as a matter of fact, the cable might have already been delivered to Vancouver, but they are in the process of getting ready to install that this summer. It's about $11.5 million project. And there's an insurance claim against it and some other things. So with that, they're going to have to go out and bond. But until they get all the final numbers, it's difficult to figure what that is. So they're floating a portion of the cost to mobilize, and then they will go back and recover that through a bond issue.
The question that I have, the policy question, is that when we're burning diesel, Ketchikan's paying for that diesel. Wrangell isn't. Petersburg isn't. So now that they have a power line that runs from their power plant to their town, we're paying for that. So I don't think that's entirely fair. I just wanted to put that out there. So as you know, I'm not going to be voting for any electrical rate increase, any water rate increases, because these kind of inequities are out there besides the pandemic. So I'm going to be voting no. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron, and I appreciate your position. I just want to make sure that people understand that there was 4 dams built. Tyee and Swan were part of the 4-dam pool. But at some point with the state of Alaska, they decided to go through divestiture. And so Kodiak got one of them, and then the other portion of the interior got one. And then there are 2 projects down here were of a size that neither community wanted to take on the full liability or cost of. So there was SEPA, which is the Southeast Alaska Power Agency, was formed, and all 3 communities were signatory to that document, and that is all the communities are interconnected, so it doesn't matter whether the power lines are running north or the power lines are running south, because sometimes that power comes from up north. And the dams on both ends can be utilized, even though we have a priority to Swan, and Wrangell and Petersburg have a priority to Tyee, but we all share in the cost of that operation, and the board of directors is made up of members of the community. So we sit on that board and we go through the information and make those decisions in the best interest of the communities. And the rate structure for SEPA has been consistent, 6.8 cents, I think, for over 20 years. So they do, and as costs have gone up, they're to a point now, they've held down any rate increase for a number of years, but to the point where if they take on extra debt, they don't have the revenue at this point to cover that. And it is at a lengthy discussion that they do that. They are going to work as they go through this to try to figure out if they can feather that rate in somehow to make it of a less of an impact. But those are the realities of the situation. So for us, it's a pass-through cost. So that's what we have before us.
Your Honor.
Abby, go ahead.
I just had a couple questions, and I apologize, I didn't have much time to research this week. How much of our power in a given year on average comes from the northern communities and vice versa? how much power are we supplying the other communities? Does anybody happen to know those rough estimates?
Carl, you want to answer that?
If I could, and Mr. Donato is on, so he can correct me. Ketchikan receives about 50% of its power supply from SEPA. Depending on weather conditions, I can't tell you how much we send north in any given period of time. Andy, I don't know if you have those figures at your disposal.
Point of order, Your Honor. I think the question was how much of the power is coming from the north, not from SEPA. You guys handed over Swan Lake to SEPA. I think the question is how much comes down from Tyee. That's the question.
50% of the power comes from Tyee that is owned by SEPA.
Thank you. Sam, do you have your hand up?
I would like to follow up.
Yes.
Andy, do you know how much power we supply to the northern communities on average?
Yes. So Councilmember Bradbury, we don't supply typically from KPU north. So we generate for our own use, and we generate roughly 50 to 55% of what we call our firm power requirement. And we look to SEPA for the rest of it. And now SEPA primarily gives us power out of Swan Lake, but also a small portion of Tyee as needed in the event that they want to do some balancing, keep the lake levels managed so that they could draw from either one at any given time. So in terms of percentage, we'd probably get something in the single digits out of Tyee over the course of a year. That's predominantly Swan, and that's in the realm of 50% of our firm power. So slightly less than some comes from Tyee. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then, shoot, I lost my second question. I'll have to come back to it. I can't remember what my second question was.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor,
Mr. Mayor,
Who's speaking?
Well, this is Riley, but if it sounds like Carl was going to explain something, so I'll let him go first.
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Donato is right. 50% of our power comes from SEPA, which owns both projects. It's not 50% from Tyee. I misspoke, and I just wanted to clarify that.
Go ahead, Riley.
Okay, you'll have to forgive me. I had to turn off my webcam because it was being real spotty. But to Mr. Bergeron's first question, you mentioned that there's a insurance claim being filed by SEPA, as I understand, on this incident that is the root for the increase. Could you elaborate on that? Because it seems to me if there's an insurance claim on this incident, why are the rates still being increased?
That's a good question, Riley. But the reality of it is it wasn't until about 2 or 3 years ago that we were even able to get insurance on submarine cables. I think there's 157 miles of interconnected power lines between Ketchikan, Swan Lake, and Tyee. And so what happened is there's 4 cables that run across from Banks to Warnoski Island, and one of those failed. It takes 3 legs to continue to run the communities. So that failed at a significant depth. And the reality of it, we no longer have, if we lose another cable, it'll take months and months to get a project underway that could replace that. So you have to replace that cable on a timely basis. Now, technology has changed. We're going to set a cable in that has 3 pairs of its own in it and terminate it on both ends for that. So insurance isn't going to pay for the entire replacement. That's not the way the insurance works with these particular projects. But when we bring it up and it's not until you can actually look at it, you have a insurance guy look at it, and whoever the specialist may be to look at it, that they can determine potentially what amount could be covered, and we don't know what that's going to be by any means. But again, there's a lot of interaction that needs to be understood about how SEPA manages those projects, and we're getting wholesale power from one company, regardless of where the dams are and the power lines run. There are times when Swan Lake is taken offline for maintenance, and we receive that power from north. There's times when we may have a storm that takes something out on the Swan Lake line, and we receive power from up north. There's times when they do maintenance up north that we send power north. It's there, and we didn't give anything away except for the maintenance contract. SEPA always owned the projects through the divestiture process. And so, but there were the contractors, and the city was one of the contractors that provided the services to Swan Lake. And over time, it was getting more and more difficult to man and run a remote service out at Swan Lake. And so there was an agreement made, and that changed. So this isn't about whether it's coming from the north or coming from the south. We're buying our power from one company, and that company has a responsibility to keep all their infrastructure up, and we're all partners through the agreements for SEPA to be part of that. And part of that was to buy power from them first in order to pay for those projects, etc. So that's what I know about it. Thank
Your
you.
Honor,
Yes.
to follow up, so I understand your answer. At this time, we don't know how much or when insurance will pay for it, but say in a year down the road, if the insurance covers 100% or 80%, is SEPA, I mean, this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but is SEPA going to come to the city and say, hey guys, insurance covered all that. Now we're going to drop your rates back down? I guess that would be my question. I mean, if we're going to pay ahead, not knowing what insurance is going to cover, and then they cover it all, that's my concern.
And of course, all these are estimates, and SEPA has also mentioned that they would phase in a rate structure potentially. But we also have some costs of our own. It's not all about just what's coming from SEPA. So as you've seen through the budget documents and the history of the utilities, we've been relying on reserves to run a couple of our utilities. And these are public owned, and we as a city and we as the council have a responsibility to make sure that we have appropriate funding to manage, repair, and maintain those. So thank you. Carl, do you want to elaborate on any of that?
I think the other point to be made, Mr. Mayor, is that by joining together the way Petersburg, Wrangell, and Ketchikan did through the Joint Action Agency that is SEPA today, there's shared risk and a lot of risk also that's taken off the immediate shoulders of the three purchasing communities. And it would be a lot more expensive, in my judgment, and we would be carrying a lot more risk if we were trying to fund and operate these projects individually. And that was one of the main arguments why it was in everybody's interest to have SEPA formed and to operate the projects on the community's behalf.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Abby.
I just have one quick statement. I am having an issue supporting this one because granted it was, displayed as we needed to do the 1.5% increase because of SEPA's rate increase to KPO. And with that, we just gave them a little over $1 million for generating our own power in the middle of a pandemic and obviously a really rainy season. And so I understand that's part of the contract, but we just gave that, and now we're seeing this 1.5% increase. And I watched their briefing on the Mid-Summit this week, and I was kind of disappointed at the lackadaisical attitude that they took towards this raise. And I understand it's a project that needs to be done, but I think they should look at our communities. What have we given them extra this year, and maybe work on that, decreasing the rate if, in half or whatever. Again, I understand it's all contract stuff, but I guess I'm just super disappointed in seeing how SEPA has interacted with our actual community members in terms of this fee and the pandemic.
Thank you. The reality of it is we bought power from them just as you would buy power from KPU. And the amount that we spend is based on what our consumers are demanding. So it's something that we have little control over in regards to the amount of power that we need to provide. Thank you.
I understand that, Your Honor, but we also are here to represent our community members, and it's just something to really, just a statement. That's
I appreciate that too. Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing, seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Zingy,
Yes.
Gas,
No.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gage,
Yes.
Bradbury,
no.
Flora,
Yes.
Bergeron.
No.
Your Honor, that passes 4-3.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to the next item. Item 6, B2, ordinance number 21-1923, increasing water rates by 5%. Second reading. Is there a motion, please?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move the City Council approve and second reading ordinance number 21-1923, increasing water rates by 5%, establishing a date for a public hearing and providing for an effective date.
Second.
It has been moved and second. Jan Lee?
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor.
Yes.
So we know what it costs to generate 1,000 gallons of water. And yet some of our commercial customers are paying less than what we know it costs us to produce it. So if we raise the rate for everybody and leave this long-standing inequity in place, you're just asking the residential ratepayers to continue subsidizing commercial payers on their water rates. And that's outrageous. Last week I asked you guys, why are we putting in these meters? What are we doing with these meters? Well, we already know that some of the large commercial clients use more water and pay less than what it costs us to produce it. So why are we raising the rates on everybody and then not doing anything about the commercial rates, knowing that we're selling it for less than? Are we allowed to do that? Why don't we turn it around and make the residential ratepayers? Let's flip it around for the next 30 years like it has been for the commercial ratepayers. So this is all wrong. I'm voting no again. That's all I got.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I would remind Councilmember Bergeron that for 3 years in a row, the commercial seafood processors have paid an annual increase of 35%. That's 105%. We've doubled their rate in the last 3 years based upon a study from a consultant that actually used the word subsidy. So I think in the last 3 years, they have been brought much closer into line, and the meters will solve the rest of that issue.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yeah.
I stand by my original. Closer, that doesn't mean anything to the residential ratepayer. They're still subsidizing the commercial ratepayers. I mean, anything that I do, like I'm building a house right now, and I can tell you that the price of materials has doubled. There's no relief from anywhere. No governmental agency is stepping in to help me with that. That's life. And so if something costs something that somebody should pay for that cost, not one group subsidizing another. This is wrong. You need to fix that inequity before you raise these rates on everybody.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Well, everybody, I think I said it last meeting, but I'll repeat it this week. Our community members and businesses have gone 16 months without revenue and currently don't know when those revenues are going to pick up again. They're spending their savings to even stay afloat. Yes, there are jobs available around our community, but many do not pay enough to support a single income family. I unfortunately know this is true from personal experience trying to find another job. Again, I know many of you say it's just a few dollars a month. I know there was a comment made on Facebook again by a higher up in our KPU division that if a couple dollars breaks the bank for something, we have a bigger problem. Well, we do have a bigger problem. It's a pandemic, and we're adding on top of it. And it's super sad to see that disconnection between our higher ups and our electricity company, water company, and our regular, people here that can't afford their current rates. They're trying to make it work, but with all the increases in food, lumber, AML, all of our stuff has increased. And I really would urge the council to please wait until this pandemic is over before we add another burden onto our community members. We also have to remember this isn't just going to affect our community members that don't have a job or that were put out because the cruise industry is gone. This is going to affect our seniors and our folks that are on disability. They're on a fixed income, and unfortunately, a lot of us are worried about what is that continued fixed income going to look like in as this pandemic continues and people are just hemorrhaging funds. And so I really would like us to rethink this as much as we can, and please postpone it. Again, I understand the need for this. I'm not saying that I'm never going to vote for a raise to support our wastewater and our water rates, to fix our pipes. But right now is not the time. Until we know our economy is turning around, we have to support our community members. And quite frankly, we need to keep them here. A lot of them are leaving already. And this is only the beginning of this pandemic.
Thank you, Abby.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Is that you, Riley?
Go ahead, Stanley. I'll go after you.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Carl, can you explain the costs that are going up in the water that isn't necessarily in wages that is affecting this change? And I'm just going to punch this one out there. As somebody that's been on disability, I completely understand that concept, but I can also vouch that the cost of living wages, cost of disability wages haven't increased in 25 years, except for by $9 every year. And when I was on it at $700 a month, that didn't pay for rent in 95. That didn't pay for utilities then. And unfortunately, that is a bigger problem that needs to be solved at the federal level. But at the same time, and yes, it's a couple dollars. It's a cup of coffee at the end of the year. I don't like seeing my electric bill and all my bills, but I can say that so long as we continue to push it down the hill, we are going to find ourselves in next year and the following year saying it's not a good year, it's not a good year. And then we're going to have where the increase goes from a few dollars to a full $50. And I personally don't want to see that. But Carl, if you could just to break it down into like what we're really looking at, that would be great.
Very briefly, you hit on one component on just the cost of living for everything goes up on an annual basis. One very good example is the cost of shipping that we have to incur and everybody in the community has to incur. And those prices have increased exponentially over the last couple of years. And you also mentioned wages. We're going into negotiations now for a new collective bargaining agreement with KPU. I don't know what the final disposition of that will be, but I can say with some certainty that the union will be looking for concessions that will increase our cost as well. Two other components. Over the last 15 years, we've been mandated to make improvements to our water treatment process by the federal government and the regulations that come out of EPA. We've spent millions of dollars to do that. We've had to incur debt to do that, and we have annual principal and interest we pay on that debt. So just the water treatment measures that we've been forced to undertake is another factor that increases our cost, as is the aging infrastructure, the pipes in the ground. And I think the best example of that is the failing water mains over on Schoenbar. And if we do the full project that we're currently designing, we're probably going to spend well in excess of $5 million. We're fortunate that we're getting low interest loans from ADEC, but it will increase our costs. Now, that in and of itself, I would think would be justification enough. But when you add to the fact that for the last 10 years, the water division has never broke even, okay? You talk about kicking the can down the road. It's been kicked down for the last 10 years because we haven't broken even, and no one wants to raise the rates to get us there in one fell swoop. But the day of reckoning is coming. Not only do we have the aging infrastructure, we're facing a mandate from EPA that could force this community to spend in excess of $70 million to build a water filtration plant and add $2 to $3 million a year in annual increased operating costs. You add that to the 10-year of losses, rates can't stay static. Someone's got to pay for this. And, potentially we're facing the same kind of dilemma on the wastewater side. It hasn't materialized yet in regulatory action, but I can assure you that the regulatory agencies are talking about it.
Thank you, Carl. Anybody else?
Your Honor,
Yes.
real quickly, I'll just say, and I'm voting yes on this one. And this was I put a lot of thought into this, but the way I look at it is when we did our budget, we basically agreed, at first I was extremely skeptical of the apprentice situation that we voted on. But I think Mr. Kreininger gave a very good explanation of the necessity of where we're going to be when we have guys retiring in the near future and our crew's all old and all that. So, I mean, we've made the decision to bring on an apprentice. So I think it's a tough one, but I'll own it. And that's why I'm voting yes. I think it's just something that we need to do.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Bob, I got one last comment.
Yes.
And, I certainly appreciate the need for a rate increase, but any rate increase is not going to take care of our infrastructure. And if we have to go in and spend, 30, 40, $70 million on anything, we used to have a state that had a lot of money, and then, we had some fairly good grant programs out there. We're in real trouble. It's not just with the water, with the sewer, with the electrical. All of our infrastructure is aging. And to say that our rate structure is going to address that, I just don't really think is accurate, because the need is far in excess for us to pay any rate that would meet that. And so that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you for that point. I think administration would agree with you that there are certain times when regulations are just going to put too much on a community to bear. And if that were the case, then there would be some serious conversations about what the future of that utility is going to be. So I appreciate those comments.
One last quick comment, though. I think that our staff has done an exemplary job finding these unfunded mandates. And I just wanted to put that out there, that I'm grateful for the work that they've done. And, I'm proud of it to be on the team that was part of that. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Sam. Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Flora,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gas,
Yes.
Gage,
Yes.
Bergeron,
No.
Bradbury.
No.
Thank you. That passes 5-2, Your Honor.
Thank you. And prior to going into new business, we have one of our contractors waiting in the wing here. And I'd like to move item 15A1, request for an executive session regarding negotiations of a lease and operating agreement with Peace House Ketchikan Medical Center. So do I have a motion to go into that executive session at this point in time?
Your Honor, just a quick question.
Yes.
Don't we have a presentation from Vigor as well?
Yep, and we'll have that right afterwards. The contractors we're talking about are in the lower 48, so we're going to make time for them first. They're on a different time schedule, of course, than we are. So, and that one will be an executive session. The other one will not need to be an executive session. So, thank you. Do I have a motion? Yes.
I move the city council declare consistent with the city manager's report dated February 2nd, 2021. It is in the best interest of the city council to discuss the status of negotiations between the city and Peace Health for a new Ketchikan Medical Center lease and operating agreement in executive session in accordance with Ketchikan Municipal Code 2.04.025 A1 and A3, which includes the need to discuss subjects, the knowledge of which could have an immediate adverse impact on the finances of the city, and to receive legal advice within the attorney-client privilege.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Flora,
Yes.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Gage,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gas.
Yes.
Thank you.
So council members, you will get a notice in order to go into that room, and plus the contractors, please wait until you get a notification and we'll see you in executive session. This time we'll move into executive session. All right. So we met an executive session. We had a review. No action was taken. So that point, it brings us to item 7, new business, item 7A1, Vigor, Alaska, presentation regarding the Ketchikan shipyard. So Adam, did I see your name show up here, or whoever's going to lead this conversation?
Good evening, Mayor and esteemed council members. Let me share my screen real quick. Do you have me on audio, I assume?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, and there should be a PowerPoint depicted for you as well currently.
Yes, I see it on the screen. Thank you.
Excellent. All righty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed that brief pause, even though it wasn't a pause for you guys, of course. As you are aware, I'm Bergen Wheeler, the general manager for the Ketchikan shipyard here in Ketchikan. Local to Ketchikan, for those of you who are watching or not aware, I grew up here, and I'm really honored to be a part of the shipyard, working for Vigor, and a member of our fair community. With that, I'd like to introduce Adam Beck, who is our Executive Vice President for Ship Repair for Vigor across all of our operations.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Adam, we can. Welcome. Can you hear us, Adam?
I know Adam's in a spot that is getting spotty reception right now, so we'll just go on, and if he can participate, he will. But I'm also with Vigor, Jill Mackey. I oversee government relations for Vigor, and we're grateful that you were able to give us some time on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jill. Yes, as Jill said, Adam is in a poor reception areas. So we'll give him a moment when he has some areas to speak, and we'll see if it comes up. If not, I believe Jill will cover his slides. So, anyways, we'll move on from there. So yeah, as Jill said, we're very appreciative for the time we've been allowed. I always want to start off with a thank you for the strong partnership that's been established with the city and also the borough and Ada with the shipyard. It's an essential program and an essential piece to our community, and also to have a strong relation within the local governmental officials such as yourselves and this private public owned partnership. In the past 2 years, we've made a stronger effort to create a community outreach to local governments and to the public citizens by way of this forum to be more proactive about sharing what's going on here at the shipyard, so that way everyone can have a view of it and have more insight to the critical piece of our community. City and borough have always been very important partners, and in future I ask that to please not hesitate to reach out to myself or Jill Mackey or Adam, of course, if comfortability levels are dictate, to always please ask any questions or glean any information that may be useful at a time that is not subject to such a forum as this. So that way you can be most informed for your constituents and any goings on that may transpire. We want to update you guys with what went on in 2020, and then a look ahead for 2021, and follow up with questions at the end. Of course, if any questions are needed throughout, please hold them until the end, unless they are of the utmost importance. So for those of you who are not aware, in 2012, Vigor purchased the Alaska Ship and Dry Dock, entering into the Ketchikan Shipyard operating agreement with ADA, which is the Alaska Industrial Development Authority, who presented to you guys recently. I believe ADA presented to the city just in the past couple months. And it's a very important public-private partnership between the community, the state, which is ADA, and Vigor, allowing for a strong and stable, skilled jobs and economic opportunity and contribution. It's a very viable thing here in Ketchikan to be able to promote local economic growth, local trades growth, and then keep what work base we have here at this shipyard and grow it.
So this slide just emphasizes the interdependent relationship we have with ADA owning the shipyard, managing federal and state capital investments, Vigor, which maintains the employment and undertakes training for employees, makes capital investments, operates a yard, and undertakes business development activities. And then, of course, the city of Ketchikan and the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, very important local partners. We have industrial power rate agreement with you for quite some time, the MOU. And then, of course, the Alaska Marine Highway System. As you all probably know, the Ketchikan Shipyard was built to serve the needs of the Marine Highway System, and it continues to be our single largest customer since the inception of the Ketchikan Shipyard. I'll just add that some things to note is that Vigor's capital investments in the yard since we bought ASD are about $4.5 million. Vigor has spent approximately $40 million toward the Ketchikan economy since 2013, including nearly $3.4 million in 2020. This does not include payroll, which is also nearly entirely spent locally. Vigor training dollars spent on local workforce are around $2 million since we began our operation of the shipyard. And direct training dollars spent in 2020 were $137,000. So we continue to invest annually, locally in our local workforce. And I'll turn it back to Bergen.
Thank you, Jill. Clicking on to the next slide. So I'll give a more breakdown into 2020 overview for everyone watching and involved. In 2020, when the project's completed, as can be seen here, and has always been the case, AMHS was the predominant revenue driver and direct labor hour driver of that year. There was 8 AMHS vessels worked on, comprised of 31 minor discrete contracts, not minor, but discrete contracts, which represents, as I stated, more than 80% of the revenue. There were other projects also worked here at the yard, mostly small, but including commercial, local vessels, also commercial from other areas, not local but regional, and then out further, local governments, and also Inter-Island Ferry Authority. In 2020, fabrication was not a strong revenue driver. We did a number of small projects for local customers, private and public, and then it only totaled about less than 1% of the overall revenue for 2020. Also touching base on the current shipyard full-time employees. Average employment between 2003 and 2020, excluding the ACF upswing, which for those not to use an acronym, sorry, the Alaska class ferry upswing, the fabrication of the Taslina and Hubbard, is approximately 113 full-time employees year-round. And the reason we exclude that is to give the broader stroke of the average employment level at this location. Figure projects a sustainable employment level, which I know we've stated before, at approximately 100 to 150 employees without major fabrication projects. Currently, there's over 90 people working here at the shipyard. Not right now, obviously, seeing as how it's already 8:30, but as of this week. Also can be seen on there. One of the difficulty parts of ship repair construction is that it's a project-based business, which means that there are highs and lows depending on the project availability and the projects that are secured for the shipyard. So it can vary the employment level significantly. Luckily, though, compared to the local community impacts, which all of you are aware and have stated due to the pandemic, with up to 17% unemployment that we here experienced in our community, we're very pleased that we were able to continue operation as an essential business throughout this pandemic, and we were able to provide full paychecks and full-time employment to every employee who is working here. We always work hard to retain and maintain strong year-round employment workforce, and then recruit more when the production upswing requires it, or when we have more work available, we always hire more. Still, there are times when the employment levels dip. With that being said, we always try to hire locally here in Ketchikan, and then regionally here in Southeast or Alaska before we seek any further hiring status outside of this region, this location. Also, just to touch on what Jill mentioned, a slight data figure from her, but we always invest additionally in the training, whether we have a strong year coming or a slow year coming. Not that you can perceive that very far, but we always continue to work on our base employees by helping them grow in proficiency, additionally cross-training them and growing them as individual people to better themselves, whether it be here or for a marketable avenue that they choose for their own, volition after this point. So keeping access to those skilled people is always a priority for us to keep that core employee base, but we always continue to train and invest in all of them so that they may better themselves and their employment. To touch on the data breakdown of the capital improvements for 2020, the total projects was approximately $110,000. This included a new pipe threading machine, plasma torches, welding equipment, new load management system for the Manitex crawler crane. And all of these pieces are integral to the operation of an industrial shipyard such as this, or an industrial yard such as this. Also to touch on maintenance and capital improvements, they allowed Vigor to retain core employees during slower times. Capital improvements that were performed at the shipyard this year, including capital that is provided for by the R&R fund via ADA, the owner or the manager of the shipyard, for the stutter. We undertook the painting and the repair of the stairways and external stairways on the Dry Dock 2. And then also we undertook and completed coating preservation on Dry Dock number 2. So that coated the entire pontoon deck, preserving its life and sustainability for a viable future of that marine vessel, that steel structure in the ocean. And then with that slide, I'll hand it over to Jill.
Right, and we wanted to mention this other very notable accomplishment this year, one that the city and the borough have partnered with Vigor on advocating for, which is that after many years of advocacy, we finally achieved passage of language in the U.S. Coast Guard Authorizing Act that should allow Vigor to bid on U.S. Coast Guard repair and maintenance contracts originating in Alaska. And we expect the result of that is to retain more Coast Guard work in Alaska. And we just urge you, because we know you see Senator Sullivan or his team members from time to time, to please thank them for that. And similarly, Senator Murkowski has been a longtime advocate for this, and we encourage you to thank her and her team for their, very persistent over multiple years advocacy on this. And as a result of this, we'll be following closely U.S. Coast Guard District 17 contract opportunities, hoping that some of those will come to Ketchikan. So again, we just want to thank you for your advocacy partnership on this and many other things over the years.
So thank you, Jill, for that. And yes, my own personal thank you to the senator to be able to help us work towards a more well-rounded base for the shipyard here. Allowing us to bring in those Coast Guard vessels will be paramount to increasing the overall workload in base here. So my personal thanks to that, and to the city and borough for their advocacy over the years as well. So look ahead at 2021, where we obviously currently sit. At present, we have projects lined up through May. Now that we have 3 underway, we also have 2 upcoming AMHS vessel projects, and then another 2 projects for the IFA. Also in talks with another commercial project for a local barge as well. Now after that, the schedule is soft, but that is not unusual to allow us to continue to build work as the year progresses. It's pretty unseen to have the schedule booked out for the entire year at the shipyard on historical nature. So usually a 6-month solid look ahead, and then continuing the bid base as it goes. And as Jill said, we are closely following any and all availabilities that may be offered by the U.S. Coast Guard to seek to win that work now that the small business set aside allowance is in play. And of course, following any and all other availabilities for available work to increase the overall projects here at the shipyard. As of right now, we're expecting a typically slow summer period, but we'll see how that transpires.
And I'll just touch on other areas of focus for 2021. Obviously, the economic and climate in Alaska, and truly for the entire nation, is a challenge right now. Vigor will continue to pursue all opportunities that are a good fit for the facilities and our capabilities. And we'll be working hard in our advocacy arena to advocate for legislative funding for the Alaska Marine Highway System operation, as well as for maintenance and repair. We know that the Marine Highway System is critically important to Alaskans in Southeast in particular. And so it also, though, provides jobs at the shipyard. And then another area of focus is continued adherence to our COVID-19 protocols to keep people safe at the shipyard. One of the great accomplishments in 2020 is that not one shipyard employee was tested positive for COVID-19. And that's a tribute to the really good communication, public communication, that the city undertook, as well as the protocols put in place by Vigor, which we very strongly adhere to CDC and state guidelines. We feel very strongly that we don't want people to contract COVID at the shipyard. And part of that is, for people in their own personal lives to take personal responsibility, and then to take responsibility for one another by implementing the protocols necessary to keep people safe while they're at work. And all of that, again, resulted in people not losing paychecks and being able to be paid during this difficult time in the economy.
With that, I'd also like to just give a personal shout out to every employee who's worked here, every subcontractor who's came in from the local community, and every other business that we interact with on a daily basis, allowing that to happen. The no cases here at the shipyard. It is not an easy thing by any means. It takes constant diligence, as we are all very aware. With that being said, brief synopsis on everything going on. I'll click to the next slide, which basically opens it up for questions and comments. I'd really like to thank everyone for listening to our presentation and open to hearing what you guys have to say.
Bob? Bob? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, it's I guess I must be muted from the rest of the council.
No,
So-
go ahead. I got you.
Thank you. May I ask a question, Your Honor?
Yes, go right ahead, Sam.
Thank you, Bob. So, first of all, the Ketchikan Shipyard is a wonderful asset to the community. I mean, I am very proud that we have such an amazing facility. And I think we can all agree that this facility is underutilized. If you travel around to different communities in Southeast, like Petersburg and Wrangell, you can see that they're very fishing centric. And you'll see, especially here in Petersburg, which I'm in, building a house, you walk down to the docks and you will see these gigantic super seiners. I mean, these just beautiful seine boats. Those things were built in Seattle, and I know that you guys could build those boats. I know you could build power skiffs. It would be nice if we kind of, switch gears a bit, when there's not a lot of large commercial work, maybe we do something that's smaller in scale, but attracts the local fishing community. I know these guys, considering the cost of fuel and everything else, to go all the way south to get their work done, could get things done here. I know that those are pretty small ships or boats for what you guys are geared up for, but it'd be nice if there was something else to do other than the big projects. But that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Anybody else?
Your Honor.
Yes, we'll go right ahead.
I just had a quick question. Who exactly is responsible for going out and bidding on new projects and finding new projects for our yard?
Well, we have two divisions at Vigor that do that. One is in ship repair, which is one division of the company, and the other is in fabrication. And so we have a division within Vigor, both locally and at the corporate site, that look for every availability that on the ship repair side that is based in Alaska, where we can bid on that work. It's from Alaska, but Bergen can also attest that at their weekly ship repair meetings, a weekly focus is to say what part of work that would otherwise maybe happen in Washington or Oregon, what part of that work can go to Ketchikan. And then on the other side of things, in fabrication, which would be sort of non-traditional work for the shipyard right now, because there is not a lot of ship fabrication going on that's suitable for the shipyard right now. But we are looking at non-traditional fabrication. Vigor does bridges and other kinds of fabricated structures in other locations. And so we have been carefully watching for opportunities. There are a couple of opportunities that involve bridge work in the near term. There's also fabrication work that's associated with oil and gas that we've been in contact with particular companies on that may be well suited for the shipyard. Those opportunities seem to be sort of in the 2 to 3 year time frame at this point. So we do have people dedicated to looking for this work for the Ketchikan shipyard in Alaska.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you for that. A follow-up question. Does ADA have any impact on Alaska projects and where they maybe will go a little bit? The only reason I mention this is I hear some shipyards up north meaning like Seward, Whittier area, are extremely busy, doing well, and have also increased the amount of employees that they have on staff. So I just didn't know, I know ADA's involved in those projects. Does that play a part in where they go?
Jordan, I don't know.
Speaking for, not to speak for Ada, of course, I couldn't state that the projects would be going to other locations due to Ada's involvement in them. I would state that the success of those locations be based on other dynamics. The shipyard in Seward, of course, has a far different dynamic than ours here for the allowability of it being, per se, like you're saying, full up. I actually worked there multiple times back in the day. And I know a couple of the projects that they have there now were small business set aside. Recently, we actually worked with another private small business on trying to secure a small business job that actually was out of a very far-reaching location outside of Alaska or the West Coast. It didn't come to fruition, but we continue to work for those type of projects. But I couldn't speak for Ada, but I could say that I don't believe that Ada's involvement in that location would increase their work base more than, say, its involvement at this location would increase their work base, because they are definitely involved here at this shipyard integrally, a lot.
Let me just also mention that Ada did pass a financing program called the AK Ship Program that is something that's available to more than Bigger, but to other Alaska-based companies. And it's available to an operator who would otherwise maybe have difficulty finding the funding that they needed to finance the work. And so that was an incentive to try to get operators to do their work in the state of Alaska instead of doing it outside of the state of Alaska by making the financing for the projects easier. So, Ada does, I think, work to try to find means to support the economic activity associated with the shipyards.
Thank you, Jill. So, Jill or Bergen, I know that in the past there was a conversation about what the city of Ketchikan could potentially do to help with the shipyard being able to attract more work here. And it's very obvious in the off season that the city of Ketchikan has some dock space to where people could, tie up the boat and then as their slot comes open, come into the shipyard, or there may be the ability to do some hot work off the dock in order to provide services to those boats that may not need to be pulled out of the water. And I haven't heard much about that conversation lately. Is that still a process that you're interested in?
Yes, that's still an integral part of the shipyard here, utilizing additional pier space in the community. It came up twice this winter where I had an opportunity to bring a vessel in that needed to utilize pier space, but we had 3 vessels on the pier. Luckily, it worked out to where the vessels just moored and we shuffled some things around. They were at an advantageous time to where they came here. So to speak for this current repair season, there hasn't been a great need for the city's piers. There's been, I know Olson's barge has been down there a couple times, and there's another couple fishing vessels that came in there. So it's still an integral part to helping business maintain here in Ketchikan. I could just say that in this past season, it hasn't come up to fruition requiring that exact piece.
Thank you.
We are very interested in it, but just the lack of, at times, if there have been customers, I know the conversation that's been had before is the lack of services there alongside the pier. And I remember I've walked that actually previous to Mr. Corporon's retirement and looked at the viability of putting certain ships along there prior to looking at projects. The pier, the city pier, or Ketchikan's pier down there, berth 1, 2, 3, berth 3 has power and water services, but 1 and 2 do not have the amenities. I know that the firefighting water, and it comes all the way from underneath Salmon Landing. It comes in a pipe that we have to turn off during wintertime so it doesn't freeze. There are some upgrades that could happen. I basically state that we're very interested, but the services also don't fit the projects haven't come up to garner the increase of cost to the city at this point in time.
Thank you.
And of course, if they did, I would continue that conversation and reach out.
I wanted to just circle back to Councilmember Bradbury's question about Seward and other yards. One other thing to note is that Seward serves a different market than we do in Ketchikan. And so ships that are based there and needing work there don't want to come as far as Ketchikan to get that work done unless they have to. And so if they can find a closer yard, that's serves their needs, and that's what they're going to choose.
Thank you, Jill. Anybody else?
Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have any questions. I just wanted to say to the presenters that given our current economic situation with the downfall in fishing and tourism and everything else, I think it's absolutely, it's just great to have the shipyard here and relatively speaking doing well. So I want to thank you guys for all the economic stuff that you guys put into the community and the jobs, and the community is really thankful for it. So keep up the good work. And on the Coast Guard thing too, I think that's great. I'm looking forward to see where that goes.
Thank you, Riley. Anybody else? Well, Bergen, Jill, thank you very much for that update and presentation. As always, the city of Ketchikan stays interested in what the shipyard's doing. They are a large part of our economy. They provide skilled labor and training, and we certainly appreciate what you do. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate your partnership and your time tonight. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the allowance to present, and thank you all for your time and questions.
Thank you. So that brings us on to item 7A2, resolution number 212802, approving a resolution of the Assembly and the Ketchikan Gateway Borough Council of the City of Ketchikan and the Council of the City of Saxman, urging the federal government to issue temporary waiver for Passenger Vessel Service Act and asking CDC to issue technical guidance to allow the cruise lines to resume operations in Alaska in 2021. Do I have a motion? Yes.
Your Honor, I move the City Council approve resolution number 21-2802, urging the federal government to issue a temporary waiver to the Passenger Vessel Services Act and asking the CDC to issue technical guidance to allow cruise lines to resume operations in Alaska during 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Abby, you want to speak to it?
I mean, I don't know what all we can do, but it doesn't hurt to send a letter showing support for our state legislator and senators that are trying to move forward to help us get a season. And anything helps at this point.
Thank you. Carl, do you have any update on this or anything comment you want to make?
No, just other than it's been approved by the Borough Assembly and the Saxman City Council. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Gage,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gass,
Yes.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Flora,
Yes.
Bradbury.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 7A3, postponement of the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities South Tongass Highway, Tongass Avenue Improvement Project. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council direct the city manager to inform the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities of the City of Ketchikan's strong opposition to the postponement of the South Tongass Highway, Tongass Avenue Improvements Project to 2022 during the cruise ship season, and urging the state of Alaska to either advance the project to 2021 or at least to schedule work outside the cruise ship season as detailed in the acting port and harbor director's memorandum.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
We do have a member of DOT in attendance, Kurt Miller. And I guess I'd like to start out, first of all, Kurt, are you out of the Ketchikan office, or are you out of Juneau Anchorage, just for information?
No, I'm in Juneau. I'm the regional pre-construction engineer. I'm in charge of all design for South Coast region.
Okay, thank you. So this project has been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, and I know there's a lot of reasons for that. Property acquisition, right-of-way acquisitions, all those different things. And so if you read the document, you see that we're hoping there could be a process by where we could phase this, if nothing else. The problem with Ketchikan is we have one main thoroughfare, and if you take this out to 2022, we're in a period of time when we hope that we have an increase in cruise passengers and a vibrant economy, and we have Tongass Avenue just flooded with traffic, and then you put a construction project right in the middle of that. It raises chaos. As we did with South Tongass and what we're seeing here in town, we have an opportunity here, not of our own liking, but the fact that the cruise ships are going to be very limited, if any, in Ketchikan this year, and it would be to a real advantage if we could advance these projects to do them at a time when it is not so disruptive to the community and an already broken economy. So when those cruise ship passengers return, we want to be as open for business as we can. And we, as you can see, we have some concerns about pushing this off even further. So what is the rationale, I guess, that you can lay on us in regards to why the DOT thinks the best option is 2022?
Well, we completely agree with you. We don't think it's the best option. We were desperately trying to get this job ready to go for 21. It was in our STIP spending plan for 21. Fact is, it was in 20 for a while. It moved to 21. It's just an unfortunate comedy of errors that led us to a delay. About mid-January, I realized that the right-of-way was not progressing in the manner in which it needed to be. I rallied our troops, got them all back on track, notified Mr. Hilson about January 20th that it wasn't looking good for getting this out to bid until late in 21, and we rallied back and forth. I tried to do an emergency, phase the project to do just paving between gutter to gutter so we could ignore the right-of-way and do the sidewalk work in the second year in FY22, and even that's not looking promising now. But I don't have any good excuses for you other than it takes time, and our processes are so complicated that we just ate more time than we wanted to. So we're our own worst enemy. We've caused some of these issues ourselves, but these projects are complex. They take a long time to get done, and so we just can't get it done any quicker. With that said, we can work with you to try to work on the shoulder seasons, but that's tough business as well because we need to pave when it's warm and not so wet. But I think we can work with the city to try to minimize disruption and move forward. And also, we have a lot of other projects in Ketchikan coming up too. We're about ready to. We're finishing up the two other Tongass projects that go from the Coast Guard base over to Saxman, and those are supposed to advertise in spring of 22. So you could see construction ongoing on the other side of town as well. So maybe the city and DOT should sit down and do some strategic planning as to how we, fit all these projects into that corridor. I know very well the problems of working on Tongass, so that's not lost on us by any means. But I think we need to work with the city and figure out how to do all this stuff with the least amount of disruption.
Well, Kurt, be quite frank with you, and we've had a number of conversations with DOT, and we certainly appreciate everything that DOT does. But it just seems that it becomes so difficult. The Tongass corridor has been paved a number of different times, And there's a lot of times when we will get new engineers and they'll want to do new things at Tongass Avenue. And a lot of them, they will cite federal options. They're not requirements, they're options. And all we want is a smooth, drivable surface that meets the needs of the community. It's unfortunate that we have to go through such a dramatic design phase when this thing has been redone 6 times at least, I guess. And those plans are on the shelf and they're pretty basic, and not a lot of the utilities have changed in the process. And I know utilities is a big part of any of the projects on Tongass Avenue in town. But you know, from my standpoint, it's just that these delays seem to be unreasonable. And with your offer to come and sit down and sit with our public works department and try to work out some of these options, I would certainly encourage that. But to sit down and talk to them without results, and we've had some of those conversations, is frustrating.
Well, I'm sorry you're frustrated. We spend an awful lot of money in Ketchikan. We try to do the best we can. We're doing $60 million worth of work right now in Grovina and Revilla and rebuilding part of Tongass. I'm sorry you're disappointed, but yeah, all we can do is move forward from here and work with the city to get our projects done as quick as we can and with the least amount of disruption.
I certainly appreciate and thank you for that. And like I said, I think thank you for everything DOT does. It's a big state, and I know they're spread far and wide. But again, when you're looking at stuff, you're looking at it in your own front yard, and those are what concern us. And the roads that we have been deteriorating for some time, and you think that there would have been a more orderly fashion by we can get them done. But I appreciate you willing to come in and sit down with Mr. Hilson and the city and the borough or whoever else you need to sit down with and see if we can move these things along in an expedient manner.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. We endeavor to keep in contact, and I think Mark will attest that, when we know of changes, we get a hold of them as soon as we can and try not to surprise you guys. And I know this was a surprise. I apologize for that, but I'm doing everything I can to put as much staff as possible on it and get all the hiccups out of the way. And we're just going to have to work closely together to get it done.
Thank you for that. Any other council members?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Yep. I don't mean to lay into you, Kirk, and I don't really know too much about the state and DOT and all that. I'm new on the council, but to us, this is outrageous. I mean, Ketchikan, the state highway that goes through our town, that's the lifeline of the community. And I'll be honest with you, people here in Ketchikan feel that the DOT, the state, that you guys, and I don't mean you personally, but that the DOT views us as, second class or whatever. And we're the first city, and I think we ought to, you say there's these things that come up and things that should be foreseen, and that, well, shoot, now we got to kick it down the road a couple more years. I mean, you guys do this. This is your profession. I'm just telling you that the feeling of the community is that we deserve better than that. And we feel that, our city does a great job maintaining the roads that they are responsible for. And we don't feel the same is done by the state. And, we've had all these problems with the crosswalks and things. And it's like, we just aren't getting the attention that it deserves. So I'm very disappointed to hear this.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much to that other than we'll do what we can to work as hard as we can to get the projects done. We're doing an awful lot of work in Ketchikan. We spend more money in Ketchikan than a lot of other places. We are trying to fix your roads. So,
Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you can keep telling us you spend a lot of money in Ketchikan, and no disrespect. However, over the last 8 years that I've been on the council, we've had conversations with DOT. We have asked for assistance with pedestrian walkways so that our people are safe and aren't getting killed in crosswalks. And now we get to spend another summer with, when we have a summer without any tourism, the ability to actually do road work with very little traffic. And the excuse is that we just didn't have time. I am not only disappointed, I'm actually angry. I'm disgusted because we lost a very good, amazing community member on New Year's Eve because DOT has never listened to us. The same has to go with the project you want to put in those stupid middle center things because God forbid nobody stops and allows people to cross the street in an orderly fashion. Guess what? Those got taken out, and I bet you could find it in your records. In 1995, 96, they got taken out because they impede emergency response vehicles from getting to accidents and getting to like the hospital in a timely manner, and actually causes more accidents in this town because we're not Anchorage. We're not even Juneau. I honestly think that somebody should start pushing some buttons and start getting us what we need before south end of Ketchikan ends up in the drink. Yes, I am mad. I'm extremely mad because I'm sick of seeing people get hurt in crosswalks and, for that matter, killed. And yet you're telling me that we work with you. No, no, that has not even been true.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Thank you.
all right.
Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Miller, thanks for coming tonight. I'm sure there's nothing you'd rather be doing. A year ago, when you guys came to town, we did have this discussion about half a mile worth of bike lane and the center things in the middle of the road. And pardon me. And to a person, the council at that time told you guys, we live here, this stuff isn't going to work. And we were ignored. And there were subsequent letters, at least two, and we were ignored. Now we're hearing about how complicated a project this is when you had the people that live in the community and actually use the roadway on a daily basis telling you what works because we actually live here. So I would ask that when you meet with Mr. Hilson and whoever else from the city, that you folks actually take some time to listen, dial this project back, and like the mayor said, let's get some clean pavement. If this gets pushed off to 2022 and we hope to have a partial recovery of our economy, if you guys are fixing South Tongass and the middle of town at the same time, we're going to have another season destroyed, and it's not going to be from the pandemic. So I appreciate you coming, and your willingness to continue to talk is great. And I hope at some point you guys actually have a willingness to listen. So thanks for coming.
So with that, Kurt, and again, thank you for coming. I guess, Carl or Mark, do you have anything to add to the conversation tonight? Carl, are you muted?
Sorry, I'll defer to Mark.
Thank you. Mark?
I think we really covered it. I really don't have anything else. I think all the comments combined with my memo, I think it lays it out pretty clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Your Honor,
Again,
Your Honor, can I ask one question since I made the motion? Kirk, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you for admitting it. there was just a lack of not getting it done. I do, moving forward into projects in 2022 and 2023, are we able to do those projects on off hours of the cruise season or cruise ships? I know in the past when we did the stretch right in front of the docks, a lot of the work was moved to the nighttime or after hours of the cruise ships. Is that something that we can get worked in for those projects, or are they just not type of projects that we can do at that hour?
No, I think that's a great suggestion. I think we can use some of those techniques on any of the projects that we have coming up along Tongass. The one in particular, it might lend itself very well to, if we can get it out to bid really early and get some of the work done in the spring before the cruise ships start. And then work the off hours, when the buses aren't going and things like that. The work through Tongass is not huge reconstruction. It's mostly repaving. So you're not going to see an entire summer of disaster there. I don't know how many months of, how many days of paving. I didn't bring any numbers with me to this meeting, but I think we can work this out, put it that way. We'll get you a successful project. We won't bother the tourists, and we'll figure this out. But I think those suggestions are good. We can use a lot of those in the downtown corridor.
So Kirk, just to be sure that I understand, what is your travel restrictions as a state employee right now with the COVID issues and stuff and the ability to meet with Mark? Are you guys going to do that virtually, or is it going to be a mix of both, I guess? I just want to make sure there's a path forward here.
Yeah, we're allowed to travel, and I will and can travel. We can come down there, or we can do a virtual thing with Mark, but we definitely want to work these details out with Mark and the city until you're happy. So either way.
So Carl, I will leave that in your office in regards to moving that forward and having those conversations, if that's okay.
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. I would just add that I think this can't just be the city. I think we're going to have to involve the folks out at Ward Cove as well, because they're going to be equally as impacted.
I think invite those that you think are necessary.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And I think we should talk about all of the Tongass projects. We got Herring Cove coming up for bid in 22. Actually in 21, Herring Cove, we're trying to get that under construction by this spring. And we got the two Tongass projects that go from Coast Guard base to Saxman. And then we got this project we're talking about. And we also got an overlay the other direction out another 3 years from the ferry terminal to Ward Cove. And we've got Ward Cove Bridge replacement to talk about too. So we got a lot of interconnected needs that I think we could all sit down together and come up with a strategic plan to get it done as quickly as we can and with the least amount of disruption. So we got a lot more work coming up toward Ward Cove too.
Your Honor.
Yes.
May I ask another question, Mr. Miller?
You may.
Okay, well, I would just like to note that for these future projects that you're discussing on other areas, north and south and Ward Cove and everything else, I would just hope that whenever we're planning those projects that we learn from whatever the mysterious things that happened were that caused the delay on this, whether it be the paperwork or planning or whatever that was wherever the ball was dropped. Hopefully we pick the ball up for those and get them done on time.
I agree. I'm watching out for that.
Your Honor.
Yes.
This is kind of a dereliction of duty on behalf of DOT. I mean, we've suffered, our economy has suffered now for 3 years. One of those years was because of DOT and their paving. So I really hope that we don't drop the ball on this and we go after them very diligently.
Thank you.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I guess baby steps is something we should at least look at here for the. This is probably the only time in my memory of this sort of thing. This goes back 30 to 40 years that someone from DOT has actually come down here or appeared here and actually admitted that it might have been something that they were responsible for that caused any delays in projects. And so I'm actually happy that Mr. Miller has made that point, and hopefully we can move forward on this. It's just so frustrating to us, and I don't want to pound on him about this, but we have an opportunity. One of the few silver linings is we could theoretically, get rid of some of these projects that have been delayed for a while at a time when there really is nothing to get in the way of them. We all suffered through the last process of the Tatsudas to the tunnel project, but because we were trying to, spread it out and not have major effects during the day, caused all other manner of problems and challenges, delayed, and actually drove the cost up. And it's frustrating at this point to see a situation where, if the project were to start now, we would have pretty much a year in which there was very little to get in its way. And we're going to try to move it back to a point where hopefully we're going to have lots to get in its way. And I guess that's real frustrating. I'm not going to shout at him like some other folks may have done already, because that's not going to help us at this point. But obviously, I'm a little concerned when we start talking about, let's figure out a way to try to make this have less effect. And we're going to stretch it out even more, and all that does is create greater effect in the long term. So that's my thought, Your Honor.
Dave? So, council, you have a motion before you. Is there any other discussion? Hearing, seeing none. And Kurt, thank you very much for your presence here today. I know it was uncomfortable, and you probably take the brunt of a lot of issues that are not necessarily your individual fault. So, again, I thank you for your patience.
And thank you very much. I will redouble our efforts to work with the community and the city and see if we can't figure this out and get us back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, Your Honor. Bergeron,
Yes.
Flora,
Yes.
Bradbury,
Yes.
you're muted, Abby.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Zingy,
Yes.
Gage,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us on to item 4, proposed topic for Peace Health Ketchikan Medical Center quarterly presentation to the City Council at its meeting March 18th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council direct the City Manager to advise Peace Health Ketchikan Medical Center of the City Council's acceptance and or modification of the proposed topics of discussion for the quarterly update of March 18, 2021, and to submit and request for additional information as determined appropriate by the City Council. I apologize for my dogs tuning in.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The dog.
So thank you for that. So we do have a list of items. If there's anything of immediate concern, I don't have any at this particular point in time. So I guess if there are something, yes, go ahead.
I would really like to have a very in-depth review on the vaccine update, how many they've administered, how many they have on hand, and what efforts are they doing to truly help move our community forward in the vaccination compared to other communities in Southeast Alaska.
Thank you. I know that the distribution is through the state, and I don't know what Peace Health part is and the vaccinations in the community, but that would be probably good information for us to have. And I'm not so sure that we may not have some of that through our EOC. So, and I was probably a little bit remiss in not having Abner at the first meeting, and I apologize for that, but we're almost to the point where we'll get a report for him also. So, any other comments? Hearing, seeing none? Yes.
Will the predictive modeling for cruise lines include an update on a predictive model for a lack of cruise lines and the impact economically to our hospital this year?
Councilmember Flora, probably not. We met this morning with representatives of Peace Health to begin their review. It's really difficult to come out with anything definitive without knowing what the CDC is going to put out there, so that can be crunched in the numbers that they're trying to put together. I think what you'll probably get is an overview of what they're trying to do, but not with any specific recommendations at this point. They don't want to put out parameters without really knowing what the CDC is going to direct. Understandably so.
All right, thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Anybody else? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Zingy,
Yes.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Flora,
Yes.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Gas,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gage.
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us down to item 5, 2021 Community and Humanitarian Service Grant Funding Agreements. Do I have a motion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move the city council direct the city manager to enter into 2021 funding agreements with those organizations and for those dollar amounts as recommended by the Community Grant Committee in the amount of $268,750 and authorize funding from the city council's 2021 community grant contract purchase services account number 610.02.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I would just say that, we've got the committee, the grant committee, so I trust that they're doing a good job and vetting all of our money well.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Yeah. Yes.
I know I was sent on the committee. It was a little late I didn't have a lot of time to truly dive in depth in decisions. I continue to look through it and read through it. And can I propose like a change to it to the council or no?
There could be an amendment to the motion. Yes.
Okay, so I'm interested, and I don't know what other people feel, in making an amendment to the WISH amount and offering them the full $17,560 and taking $400 from the Southeast Senior Services Food and Fuel Program and $536 from the Care Coordinator Program. And the reason I would support this amendment is WISH has continued through the pandemic to offer services to our community and also creating their new facility. They've really kept up on their grants and trying not to ask for funding for their basic services. And so I feel we do need to support those organizations that truly worked during the pandemic and were helping the patients or their members.
So
And
make the amendment and then we can have a discussion. So, right?
Do I need to make
You're starting to, no, you already made the amendment. So we'll look for a second and then we can have discussion of why you want to do it. Okay?
Could someone restate the amendment, please?
The amendment was to add funds. Is that correct, Abby? Or add?
to add $936 to WISH and to remove $400 from Southeast Senior Services Food and Fuel Program and $536 from the Southeast Senior Services Care Coordination Program.
Thank you.
Which
Is there a
then would
sec-
fully
is-
fund Wish. Is that correct, Abby?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Second. Second.
Okay, there's a second for discussion. Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I feel I should abstain because four of the agencies are in the mall, and I work there.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Your
Honor,
Yes,
can I ask a question of Councilmember Bradbury?
you may.
So Abby, I feel like I'm missing a piece to this puzzle. What, could you give another, could you re-explain why Wish needs that extra money and why those other two organizations should be should lose funding?
Through going through the process, asking questions, and continue review after the process, Southeast Senior Services is not offering all of their services and have not during the pandemic. I talked about this at the committee meeting, that supporting the nonprofits that are operating at all full services in a safe manner should be a priority to our funds to encourage them to continue those offering those services to the public.
Thank you.
Your Honor?
Again, yes, go right ahead.
Actually, well, I'm not sure what did you want to say first, and then I will weigh in then.
So thank you for that, Dave. And I've sat on this committee, and I know a number of different council members have. And they work their hardest to provide funds to round out the community as a whole. Understanding not every individual program is going to get funded to the max, or that, because we understand that they all do good. And the committees have worked hard through this process, heard the hearings, and made recommendations. I understand their only recommendations at this particular time, an amendment is appropriate, but I tend to support the committee process. And if there was things going to be changed, I think that there needs to be a greater discussion. So thank you. That's all I have. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Your Honor, I was on the committee as well for probably the 7th or 8th year in a row. I'm going to speak against the amendment. We already had a situation during the process in which money was taken from the two organizations which this amendment would take more money from to be given to another organization. And I was opposed to that too. And I'll be opposed to this one too, because I think the committee process worked well. And pretty much every group knew going in that they'd be getting less money this time than last time. In fact, one group actually took a 30% cut on their own. And trust me, they'll be back to get that money back in the future, and I don't blame them. But virtually every group knew they were not going to get what they requested. And I think the process worked just fine in terms of what you guys got before you. It does not need any further adjusting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? So we're speaking to the amendment. The amendment was to add funding to
Your Honor.
Yes.
The amendment was to add $936 to Wish and take $400 to cover that and keep the same amount that money we have. We would lower the funding from Southeast Community Fuel and Services by $400 and Southeast Care and I think it's the Catholic Services Care for Seniors for $536.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll on the amendment.
Flora,
No.
Zingy, oh, abstain,
Abstain.
Gas,
No.
Kiefer,
No.
Gage,
No.
Bergeron,
Yes.
Bradbury.
Yes.
Your Honor, that fails 4-2.
Bring us back to the original motion. Is there any discussion on the original motion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Gage,
Yes.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Flora,
Yes.
Zingy,
Abstain.
Gas,
Yes.
Kiefer.
Yes.
Thank you.
That brings us to motion. Recommended motion number 2.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I move the city council direct the city manager to enter into 2021 funding agreements with First City Homeless Services and Ketchikan Homeless Shelter, PATH, in the respective amounts of $71,000 and $60,000, and authorize funding from the city council's 2021 Humanitarian Services Grant Program Contract Purchase Services Account, account number 610.02.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Dave?
This comes out of the marijuana tax money, and so let's spend it for something useful.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you? Yes.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I do have a question. That as it pertains to the homeless facilities, so I guess this is as good time as any to discuss it. I've heard it mentioned on multiple occasions about the idea of expanding the new homeless shelter, which is down there next to the path, about expanding into that vacant area, essentially doubling the size of the building. And I've heard that that's possibly going to happen, but I haven't read anything on that. Can anyone, Carl, or anybody speak to that? Just that hasn't come across our plate yet. Is that something for the future, or where are we at with that?
Only in the context that the council did accept a grant that had been originally dedicated to wish for that purpose. Mark, do you want to advise the council where the shelter is on that expansion project?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Carl's absolutely right. Council did accept a grant in order to do that expansion. We are trying to get some design work and work with First City Homeless Services to figure out what can be done to expand that building. So you will see some design drawings in the future. I can't say exactly what month at this point. We're just coming up with some concepts and trying to see what kind of room we have. That's what we have.
Thank you. Riley, you have any follow-up?
I think they covered it. So that's going to be paid for through a grant. That's correct. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Bradbury,
Yes.
Flora,
Yes.
Zingy,
Yes.
Gas,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Gage.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Brings us down to item 6, ongoing review and discussion of cruise-related issues. Do we have anything for tonight's discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes.
do we have a status update on if we have meetings planned with CLIA or the individual cruise lines, or are those still pending kind of after our direction last meeting?
So I can leave that to Carl, but Abby, we have reached out and sent letters of invite, and we're waiting, I believe, on responses. Carl?
Yeah, we sent a letter to Charlie Ball, the president of CLIA, in response to his letter, requesting that we schedule that meeting. We did suggest that we include representatives of Skagway, since they're dealing with similar issues, and thought it would make sense to get everybody in the room together. We have yet to hear from Mr. Ball, but as soon as we do, we're prepared to try to schedule that either in person or virtually, depending on the party's preference.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have we reached out to any of the individual cruise lines to talk with them, or did I misunderstand last week's direction?
I thought the direction was to respond and reach out to CLIA, since it was CLIA that wrote the letter expressing the concerns that they did on behalf of the member lines. So it seemed to make sense to reach out to CLIA first.
Thank you, Carl.
Bob?
Yes.
I guess following up on what Abby just said, I don't want to wait, 3 or 4 months for CLIA to get back to us. Frankly, they've kind of, in my opinion, they've drugged their feet a couple times. We want to talk to them. I have no problem with actually going out to the individual lines.
Thank you. And I think through other avenues, we had the presentation, I think, from Royal. And I think that Norwegian has reached out and talked a little bit, and we've seen them in other venues. And so I don't think it's a big leap to see if there is that. So I guess if there's a consensus with the council, and we've done this in the past where we reach out individually to all of them to just start a conversation about what they see going on. And of course, I think a lot of that conversation is going to be all had about whatever happens with the Passenger Service Vessel Act and their ability to return. And then, of course, if there's anything we can help with the CDC. Are there 4 hands for us to start moving along that line?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see me, but I have my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have one other thing. When we're reaching out, I think we do also need to have that conversation with the Skagway. When are we doing that? The conversation working with Skagway and the different communities.
We had requested that Skagway be included in our discussion with CLIA because it's our understanding that Skagway is considering an ordinance that's similar in nature to the one that we brought forward to the council. And we are meeting with Mayor Cremata. He's a participant in our what's now becoming an every other week meeting with different port communities in Southeast. So we're keeping in touch. Mr. Mayor, I need some clarification relative to the 4 hands and reaching out to individual lines. Is the subject of that the ordinance that we were going to talk with CLIA about, or is this more wide-ranging status updates, how the lines are dealing with the circumstances we're all trying to get through?
So, Carl, it's not up to the issue that we're going to be speaking with CLIA. I think it was clear through the conversations that we had with Royal and those guys that there's a willingness for us to get back to cruise. They want to be here, we want them to be here, and the individual cruise lines, I think it would be worthwhile for us to have a conversation with them to see what we can jointly do to help each other out and get there. Is that
Your Honor,
Abby?
that would be the individual, the smaller cruise industry, right? The independent cruise lines and the,
We would probably reach out to the some of the smaller subsidiary ones that Carl, go ahead.
We're already doing that, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hilson and I had a conversation this afternoon about discussions he's had with Mark. Help me out. Was it Uncruise and Victory?
mhm.
Yeah, so we've compiled a list of all the independent cruise companies that come to Alaska. Some of these are pretty small. We started off contacting Uncruise, Victory, and American. Uncruise is gearing up. They're gonna be here. They're very optimistic about their season. Now that said, these are really small cruise ships that range in passengers from 30 some to maybe 100. But Uncruise is gearing up. Victory has foreign flag ships, so they're subject to the PVSA, and so they're trying to work through that issue just like everybody else. American is smaller, but they did forward their COVID mitigation plan, and that's under review by the EOC. So there'll be more to follow on them. Next up is Lingblad. We're going to be talking to them next. So we're going through the list, talking to all of them, seeing what's going on, letting them know we're open for business, and just seeing where they're at.
Thank you. Abby.
Honor.
Abby and then Riley.
I think one of the most important parts of this conversation, besides checking in and seeing where we're at with sailing now, is talk about what's going to happen once we do get back together. How are we going to expand together? What are the needs that we need help with taking care of? What are the needs the cruise lines need from us? And kind of working through that line. I'm talking 2, 3, 10 years down the line. What do we need to do to get to a good working relationship and to have our needs covered just as well as their needs covered? I think that is an important conversation to start now when we're not under pressure in terms of a ton of people.
Sorry.
Second. And so I just would like to throw that out there to also be talking about the future, not just when we will cruise again, when.
Sure, I think those are ongoing conversations, but I appreciate that, and we'll try to work those into them. So, Riley.
I agree with what Abby said, and I was just going to chime in on what Carl was asking for some clarification on. I think it's important that, all those small companies, which Mark Hilson just referenced, just to clarify, I do think it's essential that the discussion involve our two main large partners, Bill. I wanted to just put that out there.
Thank you. Carl, do you have an objection to?
I do, Miss.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Couple of comments. I would like the council, before we worry about engaging with the lines, we've already reached out to CLIA and they haven't gotten back to us. I would like the council to know, to understand where we are aligned and or divergent with Skagway. Before we have a conversation with the lines, if Skagway is bringing forward an ordinance similar to the one that we did that created an objection from CLIA, I would have to think we can expect the same objection from the member lines. There's no reason to hide from that topic. We can talk about what we can do to help each other, and as well we should. But we brought forward an ordinance. It brought forward a letter from CLIA. We responded to them. They haven't gotten back to us. Why don't we find out where we're at in terms of agreement with Skagway, be as much on the same page as we can with that community, and present a united front to the lines.
Thank you, Mark.
I agree with Mark on that.
Carl, could you have a call into the mayor and talk a little bit about that?
For that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Riley.
In response to Mr. Flora, I don't necessarily disagree, but I do think it's important we want to be debating and whatnot and negotiating for what's best for us. And if we don't feel that maybe there's a direction that Skagway is going that doesn't align with our best interests, we need to keep that in mind. I don't think we need to necessarily tag on with everything Skagway does, but certainly staying in communication is a good idea. I agree.
Thank you. Abby?
Your Honor, I also just want to follow up with saying we are in a competitive market now. We can't play the same game we've always played and have the same attitudes we have always had. We have to, okay, we bring the ordinance forward, great, but we need to talk to our partners in the industry. We can't just go about a different way and not even have an open conversation with them prior to passing something. And just saying, going with Skagway, I understand the partnership, Unified can maybe get something larger out of it, but we have different needs in each community. And we need to keep that in mind, that what Skagway wants, we might not need, and what we need, Skagway might not need. And so we need to keep that in mind as we move forward with this, in the discussion with CLIA, if Skagway is a part of it or not, that we need to make sure that we are doing what's best for Ketchikan and working with our partners and trying to have a positive attitude with trying to get our economy back.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay. With positive attitude. Okay, with a little research. So we raised our rates in 2019 before COVID even hit. We're getting yelled at for raising our rates in 2021. We have nothing to barter with, and we're being told that we don't talk to the cruise industry, which I hate to burst everyone's bubble. I've never had a phone call from a cruise industry person. I've never had any conversations with anybody contacting me. They seem to contact people outside of the council who aren't on the council, and then we're told by those people that we need to talk to them. Okay, that's great. However, as the game is played, CLIA calls our bluff or calls our hand when we decide we want to change the way the funds get distributed for the head tax, which wasn't a fee raise, just a change in the fees, the way it works. Now, if we look at Caribbean and we start looking at how those other countries have had to come together and work together in order to not be divided and conquered by the cruise industry, which is an $85 billion industry. Yes, okay, we are their port. But here's the thing. Their business is driven by the customer, and the customer wants to come here. And someone said at the last council meeting that I'm too young to remember. Well, guess what? I'm 54 years old. I love that somebody thought I was still 34 years old and was born in the 90s. Now, apparently that doesn't work for me, so I appreciate it. However, what I do know is that we have been doing the same thing for the last 30 years. And if we continue down this road, we will end up in worse shape than we were when we were actually trying to do something with an RFP. Now, I know, all due respect, Bradbury, those people want to call us and they want to have a conversation. I would gladly sit on the phone and have a conversation.
Speak to the chair, please, and not.
And I appreciate that. It's nice to think that maybe they'll come with it. Maybe they will. Maybe now that I said something. And I'm not trying to pick fights or anything. However, I think, and we had this conversation a couple years ago up at Southeast Conference, that as a community, when Juneau started working on their changing of the funds, that we needed to back them up and we needed to step up and work together as communities together, because this is our communities. They come to our communities. We are all part of Alaska. We are all part of each other. And we all have to work together, because even in the Caribbean, all 41 communities in the Caribbean had to come together to get the changes made for the head tax. Now, head tax has been going on down there, even on airline tickets. It used to, when I went to Jamaica, it cost me $20 to get in and $35 to get out per person. Now, I didn't even squawk at it. It was on my airplane ticket. I paid it.
So
I had no problem paying it.
let's make the point and move
So the
forward.
point is that it's very important that we work with all the communities within our Southeast, because we have been divided and conquered for a long time. We cannot keep doing what we've been doing. However, those crews, CLIA needs to come to the table. We cannot chase them. We need to talk to other entities, and we need to also understand that if they're not willing to come to the table, that it's not our job to cater to them. We cannot constantly bow down to them. I'm tired of that. 30 years and we're doing it again.
So thank you.
That's all I got.
Here's the story, guys. The city of Ketchikan owns the ports, the docks. We have customers, which are the cruise industry, that come to those docks and utilize them. And those docks are simply a conduit to the community for the economics of the businesses within our community. That dock is owned by the city of Ketchikan, the community, the people, and we have an obligation to maintain those docks and manage those docks in a financially responsible manner. We had conversations with the industry about rates, and it's like any other customer. You're not, and this is a rate, it's not a tax, it's a rate for the use of that particular facility. There were, the lawsuits in Juneau and other things that brought a lot of this stuff to light about how you manage those rates. But one of the things that the industry said is you've got to give us some warning. In other words, when you put a rate in, give us a chance to adapt, because the reality of it is they pass that on to the customer. The customer is paying that, not the cruise lines. And so we did that. We brought a rate forward. We didn't implement it and didn't plan to implement it until later in the following seasons when they can adjust their rates accordingly. Now, there has been discussion about the $7 that the city gets and the $7 the state gets, and then this $2. And how that fits into the process. And so what was brought forward is a suggestion that there's a different way that we can assess those fees and not assess them towards the cruise, the vessel. We can assess them towards the passengers. And if we altered the language in some of those things, so we didn't violate or have anything pertaining to the laws and regulations in regards to that, the tonnage clause, then we may have an opportunity to have a cleaner system by which the city of Ketchikan receive those funds and manage them. That doesn't mean we're not going to be using them for amenities that support the cruise industry, but there might be a broader area where, as we have talked before, there's sewer infrastructure, there's sewer plants, or different things that, because of the amount of passengers that we have come into the community, there's an impact. There's an impact to our community when we have it, whether it be sidewalks or garbage services or whatever they are. So I'm not working against the cruise industry by any means. I'm happy they're coming here and they are a customer, but the city of Ketchikan has a responsibility to manage ports in